Why, thank you, Russ. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Well, it's morning for me. It's still morning, even if you're on the East Coast of the US. And if this is a worldwide event, so if some of you are over in Europe, good evening, or at least good afternoon. Couple of things just before we start. Welcome to my subterranean lair during the times we're doing social distancing and sequestering. So this is a little bit different. The baseball cap, look, full disclosure, if you're looking at my slides, you can see what I look like normally. I haven't had a haircut since January, so we tried giving me a home haircut yesterday, and well, the results are mixed. So I'm having a bad hair day. So you're going to see my love of the Montreal Canadiens hockey team, and otherwise, it's the same content. It's the same, hopefully the same insights, and I hope you enjoy this. Now, this is an event that has two purposes, and Russ was pretty clear about it. We do want to play up teams as a vehicle for the modern workplace, and I could not agree with that more. But we also, teams as a means to an end. The modern workplace is the goal. And this particular session, I have another session that'll be starting in just about 2 hours, where we talk about plugging solutions into teams and what those solutions can look like. This session is really about the modern workplace part. So there are no demos. There is a lot of thought, however. And as long as everybody understands this, we're going to collectively have a very good time. So this is about rethinking citizen development in the modern workplace. And the interesting thing about this is I've been an advocate of citizen development for a very, very long time. And based on a lot of observation, my opinions about citizen development are morphing a bit. I'm still a fan of it, but we've collected some data and we know more, and that's what this session is going to be all about. It would be remiss on my part if I didn't do a call out to the sponsors, especially because I work for one of them. So thanks very much to the sponsors. This event, even though it's virtual and we don't have to serve meals or rent conference space, it still has costs, and these companies have stepped up and done quite a lot to defray the logistics of putting on something like this. So please take a look at least some of them. In fact, Russ, Excel 365 is you, Webcon is me, and essentially, these are good guys. Take a look at them. All right, let's begin. How about we talk about what citizen development is, because the term is bandied about quite a lot, a little bit more than, it's used a bit more casually than I would like. Because, spoiler alert, citizen development is not the same thing as low-code development. It's not that we don't care about low-code development. We do. And it's not like they don't correlate. They do. But they are not the same thing. I can do low-code development with professional development skills, and I can do citizen development with code. We'll talk about this very specifically in just a second. You see, the problem that spurred the whole movement towards citizen development in the first place, there were two. And they're well-known, time-tested problems that have been around for a very long time. The first one is what I will loosely call the application backlog problem. The application backlog problem is that user demand and user interest radically exceeds. See, the problem that I am hearing, forgive me, Russ, I'm hearing echo. Do you have your mic on? And they're well-known, time-tested problems that have been around for a very long time. Let's see. No, I'm not hearing me anymore. Good. I'm assuming you can hear me. I'm no longer seeing Russ in the screen down in the lower right-hand corner of my screen. I'm going to take it on faith that this is still working and continue. All right, let's talk about the application backlog. The application backlog is the queue of requests that users and stakeholders and lines of business within an organization have for new applications. And the issue there is I want more than you can provide. I, a stakeholder, want more than you, IT, can provide. And so we keep building up a backlog of requests and requests and requests and requests. And how are those going to get handled? Because IT does not have infinite resources. And if IT doesn't have infinite resources, people have to wait. Unfortunately, the needs of business accelerate at a rate much higher than IT can keep up. What do we do about it? The second thing is the stakeholder developer disconnect. This is where, let's see, I'm a stakeholder. I ask you, the developer, to build something for me. And what you build for me doesn't make me happy. It's either because I gave you terrible requirements, or I gave you requirements that made no sense, or you didn't do a good job of developing in the first place, or we had a communication problem, and the end result is it's exactly what I asked for, but it's not what I want. Or it could very well be that everybody did their job beautifully, but the world changed. And now my application needs to change, but the development resources you allocated towards me have already moved on to other projects. Formal development techniques leave something to be desired in an agile workplace, in a modern workplace. So what do we do about that? There are a number of solutions that have been proposed over the years, and one is let IT continue to do the work. Rapid application development, come up with better tools for IT to use, for example, and to some extent, better techniques. Agile methodologies have been talked about as a way to get this done. And there are huge amounts of disciplinary changes. Modern development by professionals is not like it used to be back in the day. So there is something to be said for doing agile development. Quite a lot to be said for it, actually. But what we're here to talk about today is citizen development and citizen developers. And this means fostering some skills in the trenches. And the term actually comes from citizen soldiers. This term goes back centuries. The idea is every citizen of a nation ought to be able to take up arms and defend the realm. This was true of Rome, and this was true of Napoleonic France. It's certainly true of modern day Switzerland and some parts of any of a number of countries. But the idea is you have not just professionals, but you also have amateurs that know enough to be able to get real work done and to be able to contribute to the overall effort. And when we talk about development, we're talking about non-professional developers, amateur developers, if you want to call them that have been, this is the key part, you're not really a citizen developer if you're hacking. You're a citizen developer if you've got enough critical mass of skills in order to be able to contribute to the overall organizational effort of creating and using and improving applications. So what do you need for citizen development? At the very, very least, you're going to need low-code, no-code tools. But that's the reason that we use low-code, no-code tools in citizen development is because citizen developers are not professional developers. And we don't expect them to necessarily know how to write fantastic code. So the best way to deal with not asking too much of citizen developers, because remember, they have real jobs or jobs that are not primarily one of development. So I don't want them to spend a lot of time learning how to write code in whichever language is most popular today. I want them to be able to think through business problems and solve them. I will use or advocate the use of low-code, no-code tools, but professional developers use low-code, no-code tools. So in fact, you could say they might know how to use them better than citizen developers in some cases. But low-code, no-code tools are a means to an end. Citizen development is a way of thinking, a way of being. Low-code, no-code tools are a way of getting something done. In fact, if you want to take this to its logical conclusion, I'm doing citizen development whenever it's not part of my normal job. A professional developer might be using custom build scripts or other utilities that were written with code in order to make their job easier. And you could say that to some extent, a lot of elaborate scripting being done by IT departments for managerial or management chores and administrative and governance chores. Those are citizen development efforts. But gang, script is code. Anything that involves a spelling mistake causing it to break, that's code. So yes, low code, no code matters, but citizen development is more than that. Well, we've been doing this for a while. A lot of companies, Webcon included, Microsoft included, and many, many, many other companies included, have been advocating citizen development for some time and providing tools for doing it. A lot of companies have been trying it. What was the result? Well, I'll tell you, the result has been, shall we say, mixed. But there has been some data collected, and here's what's happened. First off, more applications have been built. We have cracked into the backlog. We have absolutely had more stuff built and more things have gotten done thanks to diverting a lot of work to developers and breaking through that barrier. So yes, in that regard, it's absolutely been a success. If you wanted more applications built because there wasn't enough resources in the past, total success. We have more applications. It's a good thing. There's also been more time diverted towards building citizen development applications. That means that if your job was to manage graphic design projects for a marketing or department within a larger organization, you might be spending some of your time building an application for managing requests for business cards and getting those sent out and getting them reviewed and everything else. I mean, you might have spent some time that you would have spent doing graphic design doing that. Now, it may very well be that the amount of time you spend building that solution pays off in a big, big way. I'm not saying that the time diverted is a bad thing. In fact, it's probably a good thing if you really built something that really did help. But yes, more time diverted means some citizens have become citizen developers, so they're spending some of their time doing their day job and some of their time doing their citizen development job. Were organizations happy? Well, that depends. Like with everything in life, nothing is perfect, and this is no exception. There have been some surveys about this, and let's cite this one. It's at this point about a year and a half old. Simi Corporation did a survey of organizations, and they asked, of all your citizen development projects, how did they turn out? Well, it turned out that respondents said that, well, 54% of respondents, no, I'm sorry, that's not of respondents, that's of projects. 54% of citizen development projects wound up being a failure within their first year. And 28% had just marginal results, if that. Fewer than 20% or what I would call, or what they would call, a clear success, which means this is not perfect. And that's okay. I don't want to hold it to an unrealistically high standard. It's just that It's not magic, and expecting magic is probably naive. We should interpret this in a couple of ways. And thanks to plenty of interviews and plenty of discussions and plenty of observations, we have some insights as to being able to tell the difference between when it works and when it doesn't. So thing number one, what happened in organizations where citizen development failed? And I'd say that one big reason for this would be a lack of expertise. Now, expertise means a lot of different things. It doesn't mean it failed because citizen developers failed to be pro developers. That would be unrealistic and kind of beside the point. A lack of expertise, look, just because you're a citizen developer doesn't mean you don't need to know anything. We don't just hand you tools and expect magic to take place. Or if we do hand you tools and expect magic to take place, that's on us to have made a big mistake. You see, there are multiple kinds of expertise that will make or break a citizen development project, not the least of which is logical expertise. And by this, I don't mean knowing how to code. I don't even mean knowing how to use a tool. I just mean knowing how. I have a good example for you. Business intelligence. This is a form of citizen development. If I open Power BI and start doing clever things with data, that might produce nice results. But a lot of the time it doesn't. And the reason that it doesn't is because there are lots of people out there who have no idea what to do about asking the right questions. Actually, no, that's discipline expertise. My mistake. Logical expertise would be, I'm laying out a form and I want to collect multiple entries, and I use like one entry for first response, another field for second response, another field for third response. I don't have the necessary knowledge to realize that I should use a repeating section or a linked table or a detail list or something to that effect. I don't know about normalization. Logical expertise might be also that it doesn't occur to me to, if I have, shall we say, some functionality or some calculations going on over and over and over again in multiple places, that it might be a good idea for me to consolidate that into one function or put it into a business rule or a reusable component of some sort. In other words, it's not so important what the syntax is or what the tools are, but the notion of normalization and the notion of encapsulation. That kind, or at least of just plain reuse. Those things matter, and not every citizen developer will have that. Remember, these are normal to technical people, but citizen developers don't start out as techies. If they do, they probably get past that problem. When I was talking about Power BI, this is what I meant, discipline expertise. In other words, there have been many, many tools for doing business intelligence or decision support systems, or there have been many terms used for this over the years. The key here is not everybody knows which questions to ask of data. There have been tools for doing workflow or business process automation or task automation for decades. Not everyone understands the difference between doing things in parallel, doing things in a serialized way, figuring out how to measure results and react accordingly. Logical process flow. These are disciplines. If I don't know which questions to ask of data, it doesn't matter how well I understand Power BI. I will be asking terrible questions and interpreting terrible conclusions from the data I query. You need to know more than the tools. If you don't know why, how about this? If you don't have discipline expertise, it's like being really good at using Word, but not knowing how to write well. So discipline expertise matters. And a lot of professionals, and this is actually, when you use consultants to do work for you, It's as often because they have discipline expertise as they would have technical expertise. It matters. Then there's method expertise, and this would be more about project management. So, for example, knowing that I want to build a solution, I'm not going to work on it for months and then release it. I'm going to create a minimum solution, collect feedback on it, use that feedback, and then keep improving it. So in other words, I have development cycles. I have scheduled iterations. In other words, no matter what I'm finished with or not finished with, in 2 weeks, I will produce a new iteration for everyone to try out. And if I wasn't finished with some stuff, well, that'll just be disabled or not in what I give you. But users can factor in the fact that every 2 weeks the application will go through a revision, and they should get used to adapt to it. Stage deployments, the notion of building something in one place, development environment, and then testing it somewhere else, and then deploying it into production. I care about that, whether I'm doing citizen development work or professional development work. I might relax some of this in the world of citizen development. I may have the notion of, instead of I build it in dev, I move it to test, I move it to production, I may just say it's in dev or production. Or I may build in production, but I treat applications like versioned documents. So in other words, I'm working on the dev version, but not until I click publish does everyone else see it. They're still working with an earlier version. So I might not need 3 environments, but I need tools that understand the notion of what I see might be different from what you see. A version control approach as opposed to a scripted and staged deployment approach. But some kind of method expertise, if you don't have it, this is less important when you're building a solution for yourself. So that graphic designer who is creating a business card solution, he or she, they may not care about stage deployments at all, and they might be able to develop in production, and look, that's all fine. But if you're building a solution with other users in mind, and multiple people are supposed to make use of it, yeah, this might matter quite a lot. Another issue is lack of vision. Now, when I say lack of vision, I kind of hinted at this already. Personal projects versus deployed projects. If you look at a lot of the things that have been built with, this is less true of Power Apps, but it's much more true of Power Automate. A lot of the really visible, obvious successes have involved assets that you have permissions to, assets that you own. It involves solving problems that you personally experience and automating repetitive work that you have to do. Personal projects, scratching itches. I actually think this is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. There's quite a lot right with it. But a deployed project with a user base where multiple people have to take a look at it, look, there are many tools that you could use in order to have successful deployed projects. But you need to have a certain degree of vision as to what's necessary when you're not your user. So in other words, you need to be able to explain what's going on. You need to be able to document what's going on. You need to be able to teach people how to use it and teach them more than one way. Some people learn by doing. Some need, literally need to be instructed classroom style, or at least interactively tutored style. Others want to see a video. Others need to read something, and you need to be ready for that. Just because it's a citizen development effort doesn't mean that you don't need to teach people how to use it and figure out how to curate their feedback and do things with it. Also, I would say maybe a lack of fit. And here's where we do start talking about tools. You see, most low-code tools still, maybe they're not for developers. I would say that vendors truly believe in their heart of hearts that their tools are meant for citizen developers or non-professionals, except that If you don't have to code like a developer, that's good. But if you still have to think like a developer, you're going to need a lot more grounding skills before you can start getting productive and useful results. So if you still have a lot of script requirements or formula requirements that are very, very detailed and very hard to follow and where a syntax error can break you, yeah, you're closer to asking someone to think like a developer. And if you need to have concepts like semaphores or wait states, or there are a lot of things that I might need you to do that flags and so on that are just looping logic in some cases. When you see a tool do something like perform the following operation on everything in a collection, that's a much better citizen developer friendly approach than saying set up a loop and a test condition for exiting the loop and then come up with a way to increment the counter and so on. I can do that kind of stuff without writing a line of code, but it still requires the solution builder to think more like a developer than say, do the following thing to every row in this table. That's a much more friendly approach. So the quality of the tools and the goodness of fit matter quite a bit. Now, what mattered when it worked? Or what happened when it worked? Because when it failed, look, lack of expertise, lack of vision, lack of fit. When it worked, however, it worked beautifully, but there are some things we've observed that really, really matter when it worked, not the least of which. The citizens transformed. Transform is a theme to all of this. When digital transformation happened in a modern workplace, many, many things transformed. The first of which would be the citizens themselves. So thing number one, some citizens effectively became developers. In fact, Microsoft Power Apps championed or played up and promoted several people as Power Apps champions. They've done this for a year or two now. And one of the earliest success stories was a gentleman who works at Heathrow Airport. Excuse me. And he started out building one or Power App to solve something and people liked it, and he built another one and people liked it and started building a bunch of them. The ultimate outcome of this is that his job changed. His job became building Power Apps in order to get things done at Heathrow Airport. And that is a beautiful and wonderful success story. It also means he stopped being whatever his original job was and he became a developer, not a coder. But he became a developer, no two ways about it. It's his job to create now business solutions for users. He uses the Power Platform to do it, and perfect fit in his particular case. But his job is not to be a citizen anymore. His work experience as a regular member of staff or the employee base or the stakeholder base informs his ability to build good solutions. But he became a developer, and we should basically own that. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying when you get people that are really good at doing citizen development, they're effectively morphing gradually and eventually permanently into doing development. Now, he still does his dev work from in the trenches. And this is actually an important point. I'll circle back to that later. But yeah. Don't lose sight of that. The next thing is, some people became better citizens. Now, what I mean by this is they became better at asking questions. They became better at evaluating what should be done. They became better at providing feedback. In the old days, it would be, I give you a laundry list of things I want, and I expect you to build all of them, and I don't want to pay for any of it. It comes out of your budget. In the new world, whether I'm building it myself or whether I'm asking someone else to build it, but let's stick with building it for myself. I don't have an infinite amount of time. I don't have an infinite amount of resources, and it's coming out of my budget. So I need to make trade-offs. I need to figure out which things are best automated and what can wait. What do I need to do now? What can wait? What will users understand, and what will be so efficient but obscure that they'll never, or it'll take them too long to learn and take them too long to do. Some things that I might ask them for when filling out a form will get in the way of doing the actual work, so I just have to live without collecting an extra piece of information. It's okay. IT transformed as well. In other words, look, citizen development, it's a good thing, and yes, the onus or the focus is on the citizens, but don't believe for a minute that IT isn't involved in all of this, because they are. In fact, if IT is not involved in citizen development, that's a good predictor of whether citizen development at an organization is going to fail. IT needs to be an ally in this effort. It would be naive to think otherwise. Citizen development is not, or should not be, a way to do an end run around IT. Citizen development is a way to make the organization better, but it kind of requires the cooperation of IT. And if IT doesn't change to thinking in a cooperative fashion, yeah, you're going to have a bad time. You see, good IT departments in organizations where citizen development worked, they became coaches. And what do I mean by that? Couple things. When they became coaches, they started teaching people method expertise. They explained things like normalization. They explained things like reuse, encapsulation, and so on. They explained things like required fields versus permitting missing data and not depending on it. They explained things like versioning. Method expertise. You need to make sure people have a certain degree of it, and if you don't, you might not want to allow them keys to the kingdom. You might want to have some sort of driver's license program set up where you give people a little bit of basic grounding and tool knowledge and method knowledge, and then let them go. The second thing is discipline expertise. So in other words, talking about the importance of clean data, talking about what kinds of questions you can ask in order to get what kinds of answers, to teach people to be better users of data. Well, I can get all kinds of clever things with Power BI, but only if I know which questions to ask in the first place. It's not like some magic AI is going to give me insight without me doing any work whatsoever. We learn things by knowing things. So some discipline expertise is important too. The other thing about IT, they become curators. What do I mean by that? Several things, obviously. Thing number one is repositories. Remember, we're not talking about a good IT department cares about the organization as a whole, and that doesn't mean telling everybody in the trenches, no, you can't do that because the organization as a whole needs this and that might destabilize it. No, that's not what we mean at all. What I mean here is that if this citizen developer does a wonderful job and comes up with something clever, I might want everyone else to know about that. And I might want to figure out how to package the best stuff from this effort and put it somewhere so that this citizen developer can reuse it. In other words, the guardians of reuse, the keepers of the library, the aggressive builders of reusable building blocks or Lego bricks that can be snapped into this project and that project and that project. Look, I can just simplify this a lot. If you've used Power Automate in the past, you know there are a lot of connectors available for it. Connectors for different backend systems or cloud services and so on. And this is all good, but the collection of connectors that you're going to see will skew heavily towards personal services. They won't be corporate services. You're going to need to create custom connectors that make no sense outside of your own organization and put those in a catalog that can be used over and over again. And this isn't just about Power Apps or Power Automate. This is absolutely true about Webcom BPS or any of a number of other tools out there for building business process solutions, and certainly for a lot of tools that involve data management solutions. I need to curate a repository of reusable stuff. I also might want to just have a map of where data is. I want to create a solution for answering questions. Might be a good idea for you to know where that data is kept. And it might be good on my part in IT to be able to organize or arrange that data in a way that's easy for you to query. So I may want to curate a warehouse so that you can build Power BI solutions to query it. The other thing is curation of tools. Not all tools are equally good. And it's not a question of good or bad, I suppose. It's a question of goodness of fit. So it depends on what the organization needs. Some tools absolutely have things like versioning and deployment and auto documentation built in. Some tools are easier to use at explaining what's going on to stakeholders, so that even the citizen developer building something can explain what's going on to her or his user base in a much more easy way, and collect feedback and use it in a much more easy way. The other thing that IT has done in successful organizations that have successfully made citizen development work, they became participants in it. Yes, I'm not kidding. In some cases, IT does some citizen development, hopefully with some more professional panache, but yeah, they might pick up citizen development focused tools and help build things for people or help improve things. In other words, you might build something great, good. IT with the right tools and the right expertise, and most importantly, the right attitude, might turn it into something better and help evolve it, and then show you what they did and then teach you how to do that kind of stuff yourself. But yeah, they might become participants in the process themselves. This matters quite a bit, more than you might think. In fact, I like to call this kind of environment, Webcon's actually big on it too, citizen-assisted development. In other words, it's not just about saying, okay, citizen, I don't have time for this, you do it, I'll give you tools, and I'll even give you some expertise. No, I might actually want to work hand in hand with citizens to get things done. So in citizen-assisted development, and the success rate for citizen-assisted development is much, much higher. Professional skills are brought to the table. Not everyone involved in a project is a professional, but there is some expertise already present. It could be, it could be professional expertise located in the trenches, located in the lines of business, not necessarily located in central IT, but someone's got some professional skills. In fact, I know a lot of sales organizations out there that have one person or maybe two people dedicated towards sales operations. Same thing with marketing sometimes, especially digital marketing. There will be at least one person, maybe more, within a marketing organization that's really, really good at managing the software that's used for handling campaigns and tracking and lead qualification and so on. There's some stuff that's creative. There's some stuff that's absolutely data intensive and process intensive and so on. Those are professional skills. Those people could be working in central IT. They could be working in a line of business, but they've got the chops. Clarity and transparency matter a ton here. In the sense of, in citizen-assisted development, it is absolutely important for you to be able, if you're a citizen and I'm a professional, for you to be able to understand what it is I'm doing. It ought not to be mysterious. It should be very easy for me to show you what a process diagram is, and that diagram ought to be easily understood. We ought to be able to show what data that we're working with, and you ought to be able to see, oh, okay, so this stuff is going to be used this way. Yes, it requires you to know to be an educated consumer, but it's not that hard. It just requires a certain degree of commitment and will. Frequent communication. Cultural change matters here. So I need to be able to show you what's going on. You need to be able to understand that if you don't tell me if something's wrong, or if you find something is really helpful and you don't give me feedback, I can't make this cycle of continuous improvement to reality. So it requires a certain degree of commitment on both our parts. And then, I said rapid reaction to feedback. If you are kind enough to give me useful feedback that is not just complaints, but genuine feedback as to, we can't do this because of this, or this actually worked, please do more of it, and I don't react to it quickly and turn around action based on your input, that problem's on me. So citizen-assisted development works great when you've got these four things. And in fact, I think it produces better results than just throwing something over the wall and letting citizens solve problems for themselves. Surprise, surprise, an organization where people work together and to a certain extent trust and are committed to helping each other is a more effective organization. That actually has nothing to do with technology, but it absolutely translates nicely here. Organizations are transformed in areas where citizen development and citizen-assisted development have worked well. And what happened to those organizations? Well, for one thing, IT is no longer the enemy. That requires both some thought changes on the user base and the lines of business, and it definitely required a change in the thinking of IT itself. IT cannot be the department of no. IT has to be the department of how. And again, it's a cooperative kind of environment. Yes, coordination skills and juggling a lot of disparate activity. Hopefully IT is good at that, because that is possibly their most important job requirement, in addition to conforming to organizational policies and so on. Yeah, I should have mentioned this earlier. They're not the enemy. They're actually there to be helpful. They're here to let you know this thing that you're about to do will violate privacy laws. You need to change it so that you do this. In a few cases, yeah, you do have to tell people no. But most of the time, you can say, if you change it this way so that you allow people to opt in, and you keep track of who opts in and who doesn't, then you can make sure that you only send email to the people that have opted in to signing up for email alerts and so on, things like that. IT becomes the department of how. Stakeholders are perceived as no longer a nuisance, but a critical asset for making the organization better. That matters in a big, big way. The other thing is that trade-offs are shared. One of the things that I really liked, about 12 years ago, there was a global economic crisis. Lots and lots of things changed. When people started to recover from that, some things had changed because a lot of budgets were slashed. But when budgets came back up, a lot of solutions were now cloud-based, and individual lines of business, departments, divisions, things like that, were able to have their own budgets for securing services, which means the budget moved not entirely out of IT, but a lot of it got transferred from IT to lines of business. Well, that meant that if you're spending money and you're running a line of business, and you can't have everything magically you have to pay for everything and prioritize everything. You start understanding schedules and priorities and trade-offs and cost benefits, just like IT used to have to. And the more you understand that, the more you can work with IT and work with users and figure out what matters and what ought to be done. One of the most immediate trade-offs is when it's your budget, you spend more time focusing on functionality and less time on cosmetics. The way something looks matters less than what it does. In fact, this is one big reason why Teams has been so successful in the uptake compared to, say, the way we used to do collaboration with just plain SharePoint sites. People spent so much time trying to customize SharePoint sites, they did not spend time figuring out on how to use them. Teams is a lot less customizable, but a lot more useful as a result of it, because we immediately pivot towards using the features that are there and snapping in some features that aren't, and a whole lot less time trying to skin it and make it look perfect. Much faster turnaround, much better focus. Finally, shadow IT is a vehicle for bypassing the efforts of IT and doing it instead of turning to IT. Satellite IT is someone that's situated in the trenches, situated in lines of business, situated in departments, and but still understands what has to be done, works with IT sometimes, and even when they're not working with IT, they understand what IT will care about, and they're a lot more responsible about stuff. This isn't easy, but it's absolutely worth it. And most importantly, it is not about technology. Citizen development is an organizational transformation thing, and it's the difference between a modern workplace and a classic workplace using modern tools. This is about people. It always was. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening to me for the past 50 minutes, and thank you again to all the sponsors for making all of this possible.